Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. And Zed, thanks for being here as well. I
Pleasure.
absolutely admire your work. So I'm very happy that today we get to chat about your work and that you're going to present some of your past projects. But the most important, I guess, for now is your new project, the Anthropocene Illusion. And I would love to kind of know, before we dive into all of that, how you got into photography, what got you here? How did that?
Oh my God, that's going to take the whole time we've got. No, basically, I mean, I did a degree in photography and scrabbled around and decided I wanted to be a filmmaker or a photographer, and realized that photography was more immediate and I could get going. And then I just started pitching stories and developing ideas. I think I realized when I was young as well that, there were a lot of photographers and everyone was like fighting, but ideas had a kind of currency as well. So, if you went with an idea, you had something more than someone who was just a good photographer, but with no idea. So, yeah. So, in fact, a lot of what I want to talk about today, I'll show some of my early work quite quickly, just before we get to the main project. But I'm interested in how these long-term projects kind of inform each other, or how one leads to another, or how sometimes they're about similar things. Like often I've only realized recently that a lot of my work seems to be about how we're either manipulated by industry, or how we even tell ourselves story to hide from difficult truths. So there's a kind of strong psychological aspect to it all.
Yeah, there's a link between the two, obviously, as well.
Which we'll explore as we go along.
I'm also curious, when I was looking at your series, because today you have a really beautiful publication. I saw it online in The Guardian for your new project. It's really gorgeous. They gave it a lot of space online, so people should check it out. Oh, maybe let me put the link in the chat so people can check it out. But that made me curious about early on in your career, were you doing lots of assignments? Because it seems like you're now really, assignments for media, or you still do, or are you focused on projects?
I mean, I used to do a lot, a lot of magazine assignments, even portraits as well, then pitching bigger stories. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to get assignments, let's be honest. And so it's not like I'm turning them down generally. It's just that more and more, I might as well be. I've always worked on long-term projects, but that's just what I do now, more and more. It's just happened that way. But if anyone wants to interrupt me with an assignment, bring it on.
Okay, editors are watching, so
yeah, and the model of paying for a long-term project it changes all the time. I've done it different ways. I've done it by funding a project, by selling it to magazines as I go along. I've done it by doing corporate work and using all that money just to pay for the whole project. The last one I did it through getting a grant. So, each time it's a bit different, and it's like relearning in a way how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting, for me personally, working on long-term projects and doing assignments on the side, it sounds quite similar, but I know there's a lot of photographers checking into this presentation, so I'm sure they would also like to know how you make it happen. But let's just start your presentation. Exactly. And then we can, as we go, I will ask some questions while you are presenting, and also everyone, please feel very free to put any questions you have for Zed in the comment section, and we'll try to get to all of them if we can.
Okay, brilliant. So what I'll do, can I control these images now? I think so. I'm going to talk about the Anthropocene Illusion because it's a 6-year project that I've literally just finished and has just come out as a book. But first of all, I want to talk about the 3 other book projects I've done. The first one was called Gun Nation. This was about America's enduring love affair with the gun. So I'll just show you a few images from that. This became the kind of signature image in a way of the project, just because it upset people or created some kind of emotional impact. Mike, the guy in the picture, loves the picture, as it turns out. When I finally met him 18 years later, he had this on his wall and saw nothing wrong with it. And he said it was a symbol of him protecting his family. But I've also seen the same image on placards at demonstrations, anti-gun demos. So this was one of the first images from the project. This was a group of Memphis housewives who had just all bought guns for so-called home protection. They would carry them around in their handbags. They'd just done a concealed carry permit class. So this was a group I met. Now, what was interesting about this project when it came out, and this was a long time ago, I did it in 1998. The book came out in 2000. And it was about, the way I approached it was about white middle class America, because the gun debate was always framed then as a kind of gang problem. Often no one said it, but a young black male, they were the scapegoats for the gun, so-called gun problem. And I thought, well, no, this is actually kind of like a war going on in America. The casualties of a war, 30,000 killed every year. And the real story is it's a problem of industry and advertising and myth building. So this is Sarah Reed. She was, there's a caption here. She said, "I got a 410 shotgun from Santa Claus last year." So I wanted to show how guns had become consumer products, how they'd been mythologized and sold to people with myths and fantasies attached to them. And the images, I mean, this is like pick and mix sweets. So by then I was also trying to develop a different language in photojournalism. Instead of just typical 35mm kind of reportage images, I was beginning to do portraits, mix them with still lives, shoot on a medium format camera. This is actually a cardboard cutout of John Wayne outside a gun store in Las Vegas. And this section of the book talked about how the very myth of gun ownership in America was created. Because, you know, we think of it as this sort of the Wild West and the cowboy and this symbol of freedom. But the whole thing was created in North American ad agencies who sold the myth of the Wild West to people in order to sell guns. And this one is a .357 Magnum, which became the best-selling weapon in America when Clint Eastwood used it in the film Dirty Harry. And he would shoot a criminal, you know, and he would deliver the words, "Come on, punk, make my day," as he did it. And this gun became the best-selling weapon. So it was also about how Hollywood helped that mythology as well. These are hollow point bullets. So these are banned by the Geneva Convention because they don't have a point. So when they hit the body, they fragment and break up and tear off in different directions and punch a big hole in you. So they're banned by the Geneva Convention, but they're the best-selling ammunition in America. They're used by the police, and they're popular for civilian use, for home protection, as they call it. And the project looked at the kind of mantras and ideas often touted by the NRA. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. A way of kind of saying that, you know, you can't blame the gun. And this was a family in Los Angeles. This is a guy buying his wife an AR-15 assault rifle. And I said,
so was it difficult to get access, or were people so happy to show their guns that?
Yeah, it was not that difficult. Certain places were difficult, like gun conventions. The first time I went there, which is where I photographed Mike and his baby daughter. In fact, no, I did him in a gun shop. But I went to a gun convention with the idea of shooting images, and everybody was very hostile because I had a press badge and a 35mm camera, and they were ultra rude and hostile, and they just thought I was like media, and they knew it would be bad news. So I went back the next day with a Colorama backdrop and 2 lights and an umbrella for the light. So I looked like a kind of wedding photographer, or just, and I set up a little studio in one of the booths, and everybody started queuing to be photographed. So I also, like, you know, I'm very interested in the psychology of how we present ourselves as well, and that often helps or hinders us in getting photographs. So that day I became a kind of I don't know, traveling roadshow, and that everybody assumed I was part of the convention. And I never said I was or wasn't, but the whole people just were queuing up, including presidents of gun companies in suits, and I would ask them to pose with their favorite weapons. It just changed everything. So that was extraordinary. But going into a gun store here, no, it wasn't that difficult. It was just a matter of making friends with the owner first.
Yeah, it seems like people are quite proud showing.
Exactly, yeah.
Showing
this
off.
Is John and Kaywin Lanu, a born-again Christian couple. And again, I photographed this with lighting and with a color on a backdrop. I actively wanted it to look like a family photo that you might have on your mantelpiece. So you relate to that picture differently, but it makes it all the more chilling when you see the gun in her hand. And then, in the book, I was juxtaposing images in a way that kind of disrupted the way you looked at the images or were more shocking. This was the emergency room in a hospital in Dallas. So I spent a week there just looking at the results of gunshot wounds, because I wanted something also very serious in the project, which talked about the death toll. This is Dr. Francisco, the medical examiner of Memphis, with a woman who'd been killed in a domestic argument. So again, the project unpacked the actual facts, the fact that owning a gun actually means you're 7 times more likely to be shot, because in a domestic argument, or intruder breaks in and takes your gun, or your teenager shoots you or one of their friends by mistake. So I was really interested in kind of exploding some of the myths.
I'm very curious how a project like that would have, if you would have made it now, if it would have still been possible in this sense.
Even then it was hard.
Social media.
Yeah, I wonder. I got death threats after this came out in Time magazine. This is a white middle-aged male. They're the #1 victim group of guns, actually. There's half the statistics for fatalities are actually suicides. And the people who mainly commit suicide are white middle-aged males. And again, a surprising statistic. This was a X-ray of someone who shot themselves in the head. But yeah, going back to your question, how would it be different now? I wonder. I don't know. I mean, I did a lecture at a university, and the NRA, it was on the radio, and they got wind of it, and there was a 400-person demonstration waiting for me when I arrived, and they invaded the theater and booed for an hour and a half while I did the lecture. Literally, wow. big men in baseball caps.
You kept talking.
Yeah, I carried on, and they called the police. 2 armed police arrived. Well, they're all armed in America, aren't they? But 2 policemen arrived, stood on either side of the stage. It was really kind of scary, to be honest, as well. But I just kind of soldiered on, and they were just hurling abuse and going, "You motherfucker!" Anyway, it was very extraordinary. And I wanted to show in the project the kind of ironies as well. A lot of people shoot their own legs off in hunting accidents. This man had shot his leg off with a high-powered hunting rifle. I was trying to dispel the glamour, really, and show things as they really were. There's a whole industry in prosthetic feet in America from people who have shot their feet off.
Accidentally shot their feet off.
Yeah, indeed. And this is a guy, Daniel, whose friend shot him in fact, he shot his friend in a leg in a drunken argument. He tried to sue me, actually, because he said his mum didn't know he'd been shot. And it came out in Time magazine, and he said it was very embarrassing. But
then she knew. Then she found out.
Yeah. A year later, when it was published, and she found out and rang him and was furious. And then he got a lawyer to try and sue me, but he'd signed a model release, a consent form in hospital. So luckily I had that. And then towards the end of the project, this horrible situation, the Columbine High School massacre, which now has become a regular event. Back then, there'd obviously been high school shootings, but they weren't as frequent or as deadly. This was the first of what has continued to be quite a regular stream of high school shootings. There were 14 kids killed in this one. And at Columbine, this was, my last kind of chapter of the whole project. And I was really getting angry and sick of it and getting more argumentative. And I would see these signs, pray for healing. And I would think, it's not prayers you need, it's just simple gun control, even just modest gun laws and down the road from the school, this Uzi sign in a gun store selling semi-automatic weapons, business as usual, while the newspapers all said, where did we go wrong? And, pray for healing and just all the
is your photography in this sense also a protest? Do you feel you're trying to make change, or do you just want to put a mirror up to?
Yeah, I think so. I like to have a point of view. I'm interested in things that I feel that could be very easily improved or need to be improved. I could see solutions. You can see, you don't have to ban guns. I don't even think that's possible in America. There is a valid argument that the NRA say, well, if you ban guns, only the bad guys will have them. And at this point, that may even be true because, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, but you can certainly regulate guns and you can make people treat them with the same respect as a car, with a license and training and all the basic stuff. So I'd also been in a lot of conflict zones. I'd been in Afghanistan and Somalia and El Salvador and all these different places, Angola. And I'd seen the weapons in these wars were all American or Russian, sometimes British, but generally from superpowers who had flooded these countries with weapons. So I'd also reached a saturation point where I wanted to look at the source of the weapons and question why and how they're sold to us. So yeah, basically. And then at the end of the project, I met Officer Rawlins, the Memphis police. And I said, what are all these guns? And he said, oh, they're all just confiscated when there's been a homicide or a murder or another person's been killed at home or whatever. We take the gun. And he pushed open a door and there was this huge room and like an Aladdin's cave of thousands of more of them. And he said, this is all 3 months worth of guns we've collected. And I said, wow, what do you do with them? And he said, yeah, we sell them back to gun dealers. And I'd just been with a gun dealer. And I said, yeah, but to be a gun dealer, you can sell a gun out of your vehicle, out the trunk of your car. You can get a permit to do that online. And he's like, yeah, I guess that's kind of weird, isn't it? And I went, yeah, it is. But it hadn't occurred to him that was wrong. Yeah, because it was just utterly extraordinary.
So when you're on the road like that for a very long-term project, do you work together with a writer or do you write your own? Do you write?
Over the year, I used to work with writers, and if you get lucky and you can team up with a good one, it's brilliant. But often you get teamed up with someone who's not, or who has a different idea, or the story's hijacked and becomes something silly that wasn't the story you wanted to do. So over the years, I've just tried to take more and more control, and I ended up writing articles. I ended up making films, just anything where you can have a voice in a way. But
where you keep the narrative closer to your own. What you just in your mind.
Which is also the advantage of producing a book or a film, or it's something that's kind of packaged. This is my statement, and nothing can undo it. You know the feeling as well as I do when you send pictures to a magazine. You don't know how it's going to come out. You don't know which ones they're going to use. Even what's the headline going to be? There's so many variables.
You never know.
Yeah, and sometimes they do it brilliantly, and sometimes not. So, I love magazines to this day, but doing a book is something different. It's more special in a way.
So I do have a question about that, because you said you wanted to be your statement, which obviously for a book makes a lot of sense. But do you also see yourself like as a photojournalist in the sense of trying to not involve your own voice in a sense.
No,
like I don't like the word biased or non-biased, because I don't
Yeah.
really think that exists at all. But
Yeah. Oh my God, no. Even from when I was super young, this idea of being objective or impartial, it's such
yes,
bullshit.
it
That's
is.
not why I'm a photographer. I mean, it's good. I think if you're delivering the news in a news setting, there's a genuine reason for impartiality to a degree, you know, objectivity, balance, all those sort of things. But that's absolutely not what interests me. I'm all about having an opinion, learning about stuff, trying to be open-minded, and fair. I'm not talking about propaganda or
No.
anything like that. I'm really open and trying to learn about things as I go. But at the end of the day, I do want to have an opinion, and I want that to come through the work.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I know. Yeah, I feel the difference, and I see it in all your stories. Actually, that you're not really putting your own voice on it that much, but you are showing it in a way that does show what you think, I guess. Yeah.
I'm not using cheap tricks, or, you know, a lot of the work I shoot is even on a standard lens. There's no wide angle drama added. And I think even stylistically, it's not trying to manipulate you into a feeling, but through the editing and through what you choose to show and what projects you work on, obviously that's where the opinion comes from.
Yes.
The image up now is actually Mike before and after. This was 18 years later when his baby became a woman. And I went back and made a film about the people in the pictures, tracked them all down through Facebook and various other social media channels. Went back and asked them this question about, you know, have they changed their views? You know, I said to them, look, 500,000 people have been killed since I met you last by guns in America. Do you believe in even kind of modest gun control at this point? And then there was a debate, and that film is on the Guardian website platform. You can watch it for free. It's a 30-minute film.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's called Gun Nation. So if you type in that with my name, you should be able to find it. So I'm going to race through, because otherwise we'll just run out of time. But
yeah, we need to make sure to keep time for your latest project.
No,
as well.
I'm
I love seeing this.
So this was my second book, called Love Me, and it was about the beauty industry, and it was really about how a Western beauty ideal has been packaged and sold to us and then all around the world. So it was really about this sort of export of this very narrow Western beauty ideal. This is a version of it epitomized in a way: blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skinned, straight hair. And I'm interested in how the beauty industry is almost like a kind of religion. And this was in Iran, one of the first chapters of the book. I'd heard there was an enormous number of nose jobs being done in Tehran. And so I went there on a kind of wing and a prayer, hoping it was true. I mean, not exactly hoping it was true, but you know what I mean? I wasn't sure I would be able to even get access. But what I found was this kind of bizarre number of people having nose jobs. I don't know, everyone was doing it quite openly and proudly as well. So that became one of the first images. Christopher, this was in New York. He's like a Greek Narcissus. He just had a chest wax. I like this image. And I was very interested as well, because men were and are being targeted by the beauty industry, you know, like never before. Because I think, you know, the women's market is saturated. Women have been made as insecure as a human can be about their looks. So now it's the turn of men.
And maybe even more so now, right? When did you finish this project?
2010. So yeah, it's just accelerated on and on.
Yeah.
this caption I love, Men's Health magazine USA hasn't had a hairy chest on its cover since 1995. So women obviously have been indoctrinated into the idea that they have to be hairless, apart from their head, and men now, no more hairy chests, men. So it's extraordinary. This is a woman waiting for a bikini wax. So the project included every level from, ultra extreme manifestations of change to the more everyday things that we do without questioning.
So do you try to reach out just on a very small level? Do you reach out to these places beforehand, or are you the kind of person that really walks around and knocks on doors and is like, hi, can I photograph the waxing of a chest right now?
Yeah. Mostly working beforehand. It's quite hard to just rock up and just say, hi, can I come in and photograph surgery in your hospital? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's impossible. Yeah.
It really depends. This is a good case in point. This is an under 16s disco club. So a nightclub for under 16s. These two kids, in a way, they're 13 years old. She's already kind of exploring her sexuality in some way. She's dressed in a Playboy bunny suit, a 13-year-old. And I said, is this fancy dress? And she's like, no. What do you mean? And I went, well, what I mean is like all the other girls in the club are dressed in the same way. Everyone's in Playboy bunny suits. What's happening? And she's like, no, this is just our clothes. And I realized at that point that, the porn industry, the Playboy magazine in this instance, had become a brand that is popular with 13-year-olds. And the boy is still just this kid in a way. It was extraordinary. So this image, I went to photograph kids in the street outside the club, and the club owner was furious, and the police were called, and there was a social worker, and they were like, you can't photograph kids in the street. And I said, look, actually I can, legally. I was just doing portraits, with a camera on a tripod in the street. And they were like, no, we want you to go away. And I said, and in the end, the club owner said, look, if you just please go away, I'll let you in the club and you can do it properly. And I was like, well, okay.
Wow, that's unexpected, I can imagine.
Yeah, he didn't want the police to close his club down. So he was willing to, anyway, a whole raft of, I talked to their parents afterwards just because I wanted to make sure.
And that's also why I wondered with the previous images, and of course they're not underage, and these kids are, but it's the type of project that when you plan it out like that, it can become quite a nightmare. But I hear you bump into these issues.
This one was a random street scene that turned into something more organized. This one, I had a hit list of things I wanted to photograph. Breast implants. I had a vision of a conveyor belt with thousands of breast implants on it. And I wanted to photograph that in a factory because everybody suddenly was getting breast implants. And it took me 2.5 years of letter writing to find anyone that would let me into their factory. It was absolutely extraordinary. But when I wanted to photograph someone having vaginal surgery in LA, it took one phone call. And then I was photographing surgery for 2 days. So the things that you think are going to be really hard or impossible turn out to be easy. And the things you think are going to be so easy turn out to be
super difficult. That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, this was a quote in the book from Alain de Botton, who's a modern day philosopher writer. He said, we refrain from questioning the status quo because we associate what is popular with what is right. Meaning, if we're surrounded by something, it must be okay in a way. It must be normal. This is normal. It's the new normal. And so this is what I was very interested in, this idea in Love Me, was that we'd cease to question the power of the beauty industry on us. We'd cease to understand how manipulated we are and how even, how insecure we're becoming. This is an image of a Barbie doll. Again, the epitome of this Western beauty ideal produced in their millions, I want to say billions, I'm sure, and sold all around the world. Blonde wig. There's a whole section about how blondness was sold to us as a desirable trait, linked to all sorts of weird and toxic ideas, are linked to purity and godliness and intelligence, all made up by these kind of pseudo scientists, several hundred years ago, who created these kind of hierarchies of whiteness. They kind of invented racism essentially, but offered it up as science, and it was utterly made up. This is in Senegal, where every billboard, every soap packet, every shampoo bottle has a fair-skinned, lightened-haired woman with straightened hair. There was no one black on any of the packaging. And most people in Senegal have got quite dark skin, but they're not represented in any way. And everybody's using skin lightening creams and potions. This is the editorial meeting room of a plastic surgery magazine in Brazil. Again, study the images on the wall, all fair-skinned women. This is a country where over half the population are black, but they're simply been erased from magazines and advertising. And this is in China, where they actually have, instead of having nose jobs to reduce the size of the nose, it's popular in China to have an implant to make your nose more Western in appearance, more European. So it's actually making your nose bigger.
Do you get a lot of responses? Oh my goodness, this picture, I just can't. Okay, but I'll leave it here. I'm very curious, especially with images like this, but your other images also make me question this. Do you get a lot of responses? Do people reach out to you, email you with? I
get, different responses, different projects. So Gun Nation, I got death threats. Love Me, I got people, especially when I had exhibitions, I got lots of kind of young people who would say, oh my God, I've just seen this project and I'm kind of crying, or I'm feeling like I understand a lot of feelings I've had and where they come from. So that was a very positive feedback loop, actually. I felt that people were reaching out because it helped them kind of take a deep breath and understand the culture that they were in better and the effect it was having on them. So it changes every time. When I made my film about gentrification in London, I got a lot of messages, direct messages on Instagram, like every day. Some people going, I feel like I'm part of the problem. What do I do? Literally people asking advice.
Wow, that's amazing, though. It really shows that you pick the type of subject that people will respond. I mean, will respond to because you're vocal about it. This picture, wow.
Okay, so this is a facelift in Brazil. The world's most famous plastic surgeon is doing it, Dr. Pitangui. I mean, he's so successful. I went to his house. He has like Chagall paintings, and he has a Picasso painting. That's how wealthy he is. And he's done all the stars for decades and decades. And this was amazing because I wanted to show that actually, we have this idea of plastic surgery as being this sort of finessing type micro surgery, but a lot of the time it's actually like taking the skin off a chicken breast, peeling it off, and then cutting it, and then re-draping it, and then sewing around the edges. It's quite brutal. And I watched nose jobs being done, and they use a chisel and a rasp. It's like carpentry tools, big carpentry tools. So it was really extraordinary. And again, I wanted to sort of show it for what it really was in a way. Anyway, so
there's been a question in the comment section for a while that I'm going to bring up now from Ashish. And the question is, it's about how important is it to get model release forms? I think for this specific image, I'm curious.
It is important. Yes. Look, there's two things here. One, it really is important, especially if someone's in a medical setting. You need people's permission anyway. And more, I think, in the photography world, we understand that you can't just ride roughshod over people's feelings, or there's a due. There is you have to take care. You have to sort of think, is this appropriate? And I've always done that, luckily. And I've even told people sometimes that they shouldn't agree to let me photograph them. I could see they were vulnerable. I could see they hadn't thought it through. And I would say, hang on a minute, let's just consider this. Yeah. So having a consent form, it's not so bad, because it's a way of having a conversation. Are you aware this might be published? Do you agree? So it's vital to do that in most of these settings. On the other hand, if I'm in the street, and I meet students now and I do lectures, and they're like, oh, we're not allowed to photograph people. Our tutor says we're not allowed to do this. They've become so paranoid that they don't even dare doing pictures of people of life in the street. And I totally disagree with that. And in England, I mean, different countries have different laws. In England, you can photograph people in public, and I will do it without asking permission. Without guilt. I mean, I don't do a Bruce Gilden sort of thing on them. I don't run
jumping in their faces.
But to each their own, and you have to find your own moral compass about what's right and wrong. But it's wise to have a consent form, especially if you're in a non-public arena. Yes,
absolutely agree.
Why not?
Important.
Okay, this is a tummy tuck. So if you don't like blood, I should have warned you, just close your eyes for a minute. But if you really are appalled by this, just bear in mind it's just your human body. The woman has chosen to have this surgery. She's an English woman. She flew to Malaysia. I went there to photograph her surgery. Actually, this was a magazine assignment for the Telegraph magazine in London. And she had a tummy tuck, which is when you've got loose fat on your stomach and you don't want it anymore. And they literally cut it off and sew you back together. And again, tummy tuck sounds so delicate and so discreet. So to watch it happening was kind of extraordinary. I actually quite like looking at this image. To me, it's like almost like a great wave, in Hawaii, you could surf it. But anyway, that's...
Thanks, Zed. Good visual.
And this is Miss Essex at the Miss England pageant. When she didn't win, she just became kind of hysterical. I did feel uncomfortable about this particular image. There's very few that I do feel uncomfortable about. And this one I did. But,
why did you feel?
I knew she probably wouldn't want to see this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not her crowning moment of glory.
Yeah.
So,
But you had followed her for a while,
yeah,
or the day. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what to say. I wanted the emotion in the book, in the project. Mm-hmm. She had signed a consent form. I had followed her. I nearly didn't do it. I nearly didn't take the picture, actually. But
imagine.
And there are those points where you really have to decide, and it's not always easy.
No, I agree. But for the story, I think this image tells it very well, because it shows her devastation of feeling not pretty enough for the system, which is sad, because she's gorgeous.
Context, and I didn't use that in an English magazine where she would be confronted with it in an embarrassing way. Do you know what I mean? It was in the book.
Yeah.
And that was okay. It was very unlikely her friends were going to be
seeing that
in a photography book. This woman is, this is the end, the last one I'll show you from this project. Her caption, she said, "I won't let go. I may die, but I'll die with no wrinkles." Her entire life savings on facelifts. And there was a sort of bittersweet sadness to this as well. And I wanted everybody to look at this project and not see them, but to see us, to see you can't escape that we're all part of this in one way or another. I'm not laughing at the people in the pictures.
No.
It's us, it's our culture.
I think you do a great job at that in all your projects. It's not othering. at all.
Yeah,
You really feel like, oh, this is the system we're in. It's more about the system, I would say, than
exactly. More and
about
more,
us.
that's true. The work, more and more and more, it is about the culture we make for ourselves or we've had forced on us. And then finally, the third book I did was a much more modest, local project. I'd finished Love Me. I'd traveled to 18 different countries to shoot that. It had taken 5 years, just kind of, because you have to finance it and find ways of just getting the money to go back on your next project. And then this one was all done like within a mile of my house. I would get on my bike, cycle, locally. And it was about this borough that I grew up in, which was generally quite a kind of scrappy, shitty, poor, rundown area of London that had become kind of hipster ground zero. Suddenly cool, desirable, and the beginning of gentrification. This is on the canal. And then the sort of suddenly this explosion of hipsteriness. So I started doing portraits on the street corner.
Do you bring lights with you? Is that what I'm...
No, not for these ones.
The
No
studio
light.
ones you do, or...
It's funny because like when I'm on the street, I don't want all the umbrellas and the lights and everything. Then I want to look like just someone with a tripod and a camera, no fuss. But if I'm in a convention or in a gun store, then in a funny way, the more equipment I have, the more people accept me as a non-threatening entity. It's really
bigger
weird.
The line gets.
Yeah, I don't know. So here, these were all just simple portraits. I found a spot which the background seemed to work and the light was nice. And I returned to that exact spot over a year doing different portraits. And just on the other corner of that same block was the corner of Hoxton Street, where a girl was shot through the window of a chicken takeaway. She was queuing up for a chicken and chips. 2 young guys on bicycles pulled up and shot through the window, and she was killed. I think they weren't targeting her, but I was very interested in how these 2 worlds were inhabiting the same place. Hipster affluence and a kind of very different story for a much less privileged group of people. And so I was kind of focused partly on that too, how these kind of 2 worlds coexist. And these were like kind of young, they are in a gang, and they're hanging out in London Fields, which now has become really hipster ground zero with Columbia Road Market. So, the houses behind them, that house, that's going to cost like £2.5 million now because of rising house prices. And they're little gangbangers. So it's just a funny, odd portrait. But in the context of the project, it had sort of resonance. And
was this your first big project close to home, right?
I guess so. I'd shot lots when I was young, growing up, being a photographer at university. I'd been to the countless demonstrations and doing all the things that, photographers do when they're kind of learning. Like in a way, you have to kind of learn how to do things, learn how to be on the street, learn how to deal with the police, learn how to feel under threat and kind of navigate and maneuver around these things. So I do remember that very clearly. So I'd done a lot in London in that way, but then started traveling. And so, yeah, this was a kind of real return home in a way. This is the Towpath Cafe, one of the early super hipster cafes in Hackney, along the canal. And yeah, back to my little portrait booth on the street. She became, that was the cover of the book. And going back to the question of consent forms, the publisher, we decided to put this on the cover, and he said, well, you really need a consent form if we're going to put it on the cover. And luckily I had one, and I was like, okay, no problem. We'll just contact her and get her blessing. And she was quite happy.
I'm sure she loved it. She looks like someone who was happy to bump into you.
Yeah,
all
yeah.
dressed up and.
All right, so I'm going to speed through because we're really going to run out of time otherwise.
Yes.
And then this is like when gentrification reaches its pinnacle in your area, you know it because the streets all have jumpers and cardigans on, like art pop-up interventions. So
That's
this
so
is like
true.
Hackney reaching peak gentrification. So, all right. Oh, and then finally I saw these on the internet. I didn't do this. Someone had co-opted my images and made, I don't know what you call them, like design meme type things from the people in the pictures. So I realized that my work was supposed to kind of gently critique gentrification, had become co-opted by the forces of gentrification. And that was when I ended up making a film. So I made a documentary film, like a feature-length film about one street in Hackney, where for 4 years I charted the progress of gentrification. And that's on Amazon Prime, but only in the UK, unfortunately. So yeah, that's it. So now, finally, I'm going to have to speed through this as well.
Oh, wait,
yeah.
Zed, there's a question from Lauren that I would like to get to before you get into this beautiful new project. And the question is, your book concepts and series explore quite big, or I'd say very big, suicidal questions that span countries. Do you begin your project with a small inspiration or specific visuals that grow into a larger concept?
Yeah, often I'll just start with an idea, a thought. You start gathering press cuttings or links to stories, articles, little extracts, maybe photos. I just find, I'll start with a Word document with a headline on it. Then I fill a page, and then Love Me is a 2,500 page Word document of references, pictures, articles, all sorts. So just start small, and it's really weird when you start looking at a project, an idea, you just see more and more stuff. It sort of becomes visible to you.
True.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't have to feel panicked. So sometimes I write a little hit list, 15 things that would be quite good to photograph. You just make them up, and then you tick them off, or you find better things as you go along. So just start with a skeleton of an idea. Okay, I'm going to go in, but we can talk about it at the end. So this is the Anthropocene Illusion. So this project is about, quite simply, how we humans have divorced ourselves from nature, and how at a time that we've kind of we are destroying the natural world more and more. And at this very moment in our kind of evolution, we've started to create ever more kind of artificial, choreographed versions of nature, the very thing that we're destroying. And arguably we do that to sort of either hide what we're doing from ourselves, or offer something that we kind of crave. We want and need nature. So we create synthetic versions of it to satisfy a craving. And the tragedy is, as we make these things, they become like the monuments, the very things that we've lost. So this
project is so good. It's the kind of project you look at, and I'm sure everyone in the chat now will agree, and where you think as a photographer, I wish I would have thought of this. It's so smart, Ed.
I'm really interested in things that are so obvious that they're all around us, like Love Me. When I was researching that, I was really secretive about it because I was thinking, I can't believe hasn't done a big project about the beauty industry and the power it has on us. And I couldn't believe it. And in a way, this is the same. It's like, it's so everywhere that it's become invisible. And those are the things I used to, like a lot of photographers, we go travel the world looking for the most extraordinary beekeepers of Peru who do some strange thing. And now I'm the opposite of that. I'm not looking for novelty. I'm looking for, in a way, the obvious that hides in plain sight. So yeah, this is in China. This is a whale shark. This is in Germany, an artificial beach. It's also the world's largest indoor rainforest in this huge hangar in quite near Berlin, called Tropical Islands. It's like the Truman Show. If you lean in, you can see it's all a canvas sky. And in the book, you can see better, but there's like ripples in the background and a little tear. I love these little details. And this is possibly the most depressing
picture so in awful.
The book. I'm not trying to be depressing, and I've had to be careful not to overdo it. But this one is deeply tragic. I mean, it's a polar bear in an artificial polar scape on a fiberglass rock with a painted wall. And this is a fiberglass mountain in Chinese Disneyland.
I was actually curious because you're saying I didn't want to depress the viewer too much. I think there's a lot of humor in your work in general, especially in this series, but it's also sad if you really...
I think you're right. This kind of tragicomedy, you might call it.
Yeah.
There's comedic moments, but there's also tragedy, irony. There's a feeling that we could just all do better as well. Again, there's a feeling of the forces that we're also a victim to as well, of industry and the sort of machinery that conducts the world the way it does. This is in Italy. It's called Miniature Italy. This is the back of the Dolomites, at the back of the exhibit. These are little miniature polar bears in a fish tank in an aquarium. So I was also interested how, as we destroy nature, we kind of fetishize it. We love animals. We fetishize animals. We are obsessed by natural history documentaries. Kids have cuddly toys, which they love with all their heart. So there's this kind of need and desire we have for nature. But we're also willing to allow it to be destroyed while we cuddle fake versions of it. So this is just a little ornament in a fish tank. This is from a monkey enclosure in a zoo. And again, huge time spent to sort of paint these beautiful, evocative scenes of nature, but basically on concrete. This is the Bronx Zoo in America, near New York.
How many countries or places did you go to?
So in this project, 14 different countries. And again, that was spread over a 6-year period. So, if you think about it, it only meant I had to go to 3 countries a year. So it's like, I don't go on holiday, I go on a trip where I shoot pictures. And that way, you can fit it in and just keep sane, really, and make it possible. This is Walt Disney's version of Africa in Florida. So in Disneyland, there's actually literally a place called Africa with, concrete mountains and real animals as well, living hippos and alligators, but a kind of sanitized, commodified version of Africa that you can visit in an hour. This is a completely fake tree. Some of the pictures in the book are details made of resin and spray concrete. This is back to the indoor rainforest in Germany. Sorry,
I'm curious about something. I'm just trying to think as a maker, right?
Yeah.
If you go back to the previous image. So this is a beautiful still life, and you're photographing the scenes where they are. But I can imagine maybe you had a moment within this project where you might have thought, oh, I want to photograph the maker of a tree like this, the person making it. Like, how do you creatively think this is in, this is out? It's impossible to describe maybe, but.
No, it's a good question. I mean, you're exactly right. I found out who makes these. There's a place in England, in Cornwall, called Coda Collective, and I knew that they'd made these huge trees for zoos in Germany and different places. Baobab trees, like it's the size of a truck in thickness. And I looked at their website and then I called them, and I never used one of those pictures, and it never quite worked out. So sometimes you spend ages. I wanted to photograph an old like teddy bear, like a Victorian bear, because basically at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, when humans started really destroying nature, like on an industrial scale, And that's what this project's about. That's why it's called the Anthropocene Illusion. The Anthropocene is a term used by geologists that say that we live in a time, it's called the age of human, where the impact on our planet is so great and so accelerated that in millions of years, they'll be able to scratch away at the sedimentary rock and see evidence of what we did and what we're doing now. And that will be evidence of like nuclear isotopes that fell from the sky after all our nuclear testing in the 50s. It'll be the fallout from fossil fuel burning. It'll be like a carpet of chicken bones from all of our fast food consumption. Concrete, there'll be like a whole layer of concrete. So in millions of years, you know, the geologists will be scraping away, just thinking, what happened in these 200 years? Which we can see in the geological layer. So that's the Anthropocene, and the illusion that I refer to in the title is the illusion that we create almost willingly to hide from ourselves what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So this is the illusion, that all of this kind of choreographed or artificial world. This is the indoor rainforest. This, to me, they're like a little modern Adam and Eve with their sort of soft, pale, modern bodies in the Garden of Eden.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and this chimpanzee. This is weird. This is becoming, in a way, the signature image of the project by mistake, just in the way Mike and his baby did. There's always an image that seems to kind of surface as above the others. I think it's just because it has a certain emotion. Yeah, I guess sort of epitomizes everything in some way.
The polar bear and this chimpanzee are, you can really feel it in your heart.
Yeah. And there's no pictures of pollution in the project apart from this one. This was shot in China, and this one I put in because there's this sort of veneer. There's this attempt to beautify it with a mural. But yeah, the project was less about the typical images of destruction or pollution and more about what we put in place of what we've already removed. And this is an entirely artificial tree, again, made of a kind of steel substructure with spray concrete and silk leaves. Quite a lot of artistry goes into these things as well. This is a passenger pigeon hunted to extinction in America in the 18th century. I mean, just used for sport and mass killings. There were billions of them, literally billions of these birds, and they were just decimated. This is in London. It's just a car park. But again, this kind of enormous effort to beautify it and make it somehow look more natural.
What is the message you want to, like, really, like, when people open up your book, what do you want them to think? Do you want them to become sad or stop this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, it's part of a conversation, isn't it? You know, the idea, when I began in photography, I was like, we can change the world. All I have to do is photograph the conflict, and then everyone will be appalled, and then everyone will stop it from happening. Super naive, super hopeful. I'm still glad I felt that way, but I think I'm more realistic. But nevertheless, you know, communication, conversation is vital. Every decision that we make as humans, including every politician, is based on what we've read, what we've seen, what we've heard, what our parents told us, all of that. We're literally a product of our culture. So I think all I'm trying to do is be a drop in the ocean, add something to the conversation that says, hang on a minute, let's think about what we want. Let's think about what we value. Let's think about what we should demand of our politicians, of our leaders. You know, there's a huge crisis, isn't there, of you know, and we can be tricked as well into feeling so guilty that we're paralyzed. Oh, I'm recycling my paper bag. And instead of, you know, really asking, why do we have presidents and prime ministers who are literally selling off the natural world to the highest bidder? You know, so it's part of a conversation, I guess, you know, and I'm not so naive that I think it can change everything. But yeah, it's part of a dialogue and part of education and part of thought process.
It's hopeful to still think that way, though, because I think people will, like, I really feel when looking at this, like, I already knew we were going in the wrong direction, but after seeing this, you can feel it, right? So I'm sure viewers will
I mean,
feel the
I'm not
same way.
against, you know, artificiality, and you know, it has its place, but if it's all we have left, if it's replacing the real thing, that's not okay. So,
Exactly.
and there's pictures of national parks coming up. This is a quote by John Berger. Everywhere animals disappear, in zoos, they constitute the living monument to their own disappearance. So at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, as we cut all of our ties with nature, with the animals, with even working animals, so we introduced the idea of cuddly toys, of theme parks, you know, of zoos, all sorts of things. You know, they happened, they coincided with that kind of divorce from nature. This is the Natural History Museum in America. Buffaloes hunted to extinction. Now just a diorama that we can look at. This is Yosemite National Park in America. This is a tour bus blocking the view. People, yeah, this is a great place. I'm glad it exists, but people go there in their millions to get a fix of nature, to be told all is well. Here lies the pristine wilderness. So I'm glad it exists and I support it 100%. The problem is if people go there and are reassured and then just let everything else get destroyed, you know, because you go back to work and you think, well, I've seen it, that nature's still there. And that, again, that becomes part of the illusion, and that's the danger. And even
I
here,
love the word parking in it. Reminds me of that song. I don't know who's it by, but they paved paradise and put up a parking lot.
Is it Joni Mitchell?
I don't know.
I think it might be, but yeah, exactly. And you know, people get out their car, and sometimes they take pictures from their car. Other times they get out and just walk a few feet to the prescribed viewing spot, where you take your photos and you get your fix of nature. Some of it is indeed very beautiful. This is the same place, Yosemite, but the reality is this, which is, you know, hours long traffic jams, engines idling, air conditioners running, windows up, queues of people coming to get their fix of nature, offered to them on a plate. And this is the Niagara Falls in Canada, well, America and Canada. These tiny little figures you can see in their little red plastic Macs, having their exhilarating moment of nature. Again, you know, brilliant. It's a real place. It exists. I love it. I really like Niagara Falls, but all around it is hotels, snack bars, motels, car parks. You know, it's like, it's where you go to see and feel what nature kind of, in a way, once was. This is in a zoo. This is in London. After a massive rioting in this housing estate, a policeman was stabbed to death. And then afterwards, in the aftermath, they created this waterfall mural as I suppose, as a way of pacifying everyone, hoping there wouldn't be another riot. And then this says that, this is another John Berger quote from his book, Why Look at Animals. He said, the treatment of animals in the 19th century romantic painting was already an acknowledgement of their impending disappearance. The images are of animals receding into a wildness that existed only in the imagination. So what he's saying is, even when this painting was done by Eugene Delacroix, who was the kind of leader of the Romantic movement, this was already the beginning of this sort of romanticization, idealization of nature. But as we were withdrawing from it, and it turns out that he painted this tiger at the zoo in Paris and used his pet cat as a model when he got home to finish the sketches and drawings. So even then, you know, it was kind of the beginning of this kind of illusory version. This is Kew Gardens in London, more of a kind of colonial place that was built to bring back tropical plants from what was then the great unknown. Now we go there to see tropical plants that often don't exist anymore in the natural habitat. Those places have been destroyed. So the very kind of purpose of the place has changed.
So when you were editing this this series, do you ask others to have to, because the project is so close to your heart, clearly.
Yeah.
Do you do the editing process yourself?
Yeah, I do it myself, and then I often find one or two people who I end up sitting down with, and they get to know the work. It might be like an unfortunate girlfriend or someone that I kind of inveigle into, you know, showing it. It starts off quite innocently. Oh, do you want to see this? And talking about it. But then after a while, we start arguing and bickering about it. And so, yeah, I'm very open to, or an assistant. I have an assistant. So often I say, right, let's look at this. What do you think of this? Which one? Do you like this one or that one?
Yeah.
And so we kind of go in circles and both change our mind. And you know, you can't ask everyone because you just have so many different opinions. So you just try and listen to your own voice and, yeah, find a couple of people you kind of trust, and, you know, don't always follow what they say, but at least listen.
Yeah, it's good to have help in that,
also,
right?
if you ask 3 people and 2 say, nah, not that one, then you got to start listening. I kind of do that as well sometimes if it's something I can't make my mind up.
Absolutely.
You know, this is a scene in Norway, the Natural History Museum. Totally ridiculous. I mean, I thought the Norwegians would do better than this. I'm very disappointed in the Norwegians. It's like a biblical scene of madness. It's like, well, you know, Noah's Ark or something. These creatures wouldn't even exist in the same proximity.
And here they are.
In fact, I put a quote in from the Bible, which, you know, it says, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on earth. So, you know, we used to be pagans and have these ancient other cultures where we revered nature, where we loved and understood its importance. And then the Bible came along and started saying, no, you know, you humans, we're above everything. We're the top of this tree. It's all there for us. It's a commodity. I mean, I'm not just blaming the Bible, but, you know, even Aristotle said something similar in ancient Greece, that, you know, humans were above everything. This is the last white rhino, female white rhino. There's no male left. So it's what is called functional existence. It's alive, but it's, sorry, not functional existence, functional extinction. So it's an extinct animal that's still alive, essentially, because it can't reproduce. There's no creature of the opposite sex. Monarch butterfly. These images, some of them come with quite long stories in the book as well, like detailed backstories. This is in a natural history museum. Pennsylvania forest, all made of silk. This is a bear enclosure with a kind of motorway built into a tunnel above it. Extraordinary.
How did you explain the project to people, for instance, at the Norwegian museum? Did you tell them, I just really like animals, and or were you explaining?
No, sometimes I just wouldn't. I just go as a customer. I just go as an observer, but not always. And sometimes I just say, look, I'm doing a project about, I never lie, but sometimes I just don't tell the full detailed story. So I might just say I'm doing a global look at humans' interaction with the natural world and leave it at that.
To be honest, I also think this project is so logical, but so close to all of us that you wouldn't even understand it if you would explain it properly beforehand. Before seeing all of it, you'd be like, okay, what's this about? Because it's so everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And this was done at the Natural History Museum in Germany, in Hamburg. And I told them exactly what I was doing, and they brought exhibits out. This is an African grey parrot. They've been hunted mercilessly because they're so popular as pets. And so the pet trade, and also they're losing their habitats in these forests. So I went to the museum and I told them what I was doing. And I said, you know, can you show me exhibits of and I gave them a kind of shopping list of endangered animals, you know, and they understood it and, you know, participated in it. Again, this is Kew Gardens in London, sort of. It's just got this strange kind of, not exactly violence, but, you know, Africa in a glass house. This is in England. It's all made of plastic. It's the coral reef decoration for aquariums, entirely made of plastic.
Plastics.
And another polar bear in a kind of extraordinary polar landscape. Volcano Bay in America, kind of theme park with a volcano that explodes and erupts on the hour every hour with lights, smoke, and, you know.
I'm guessing the US must have been the wildest. I mean,
yeah, although actually
is...
it is, but China's superseded it now, because China has this burgeoning middle class, hungry for novelty, all detached from nature as well. So China is really replacing the way America used to be in that way. But as you can see, I mean, it's in a lot of other countries too. This is a quote from the book called Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord. He says, in societies where modern conditions of production prevail, life is presented as an immense accumulation of spectacles. Everything that was directly lived has receded into representation. So, I mean, a book like this, I didn't even know about it until I was working on the project, and people say, oh, have you read this or have you done that? And then things kind of reveal themselves as you're going, and you discover, you know, that some people have made work or written about something similar in the past. John Berger is a case in point. He wrote a brilliant book called Why Look at Animals, and it was extraordinary. It was like a revelation, but, you know, a tiny book. And I read it like I was already 2/3 of the way through. But it was like, oh my God, you know, it's literally what I'm interested in. This is in Sri Lanka, popular with Instagrammers to go to your infinity pool and get your selfies with elephants behind you. These elephants are all a captive herd. They're brought down to the river to make a nice backdrop for holidaymakers to do their selfies. So again, it's part of this kind of construct. This is Monument Valley in America. Again, you can see they've just stepped out of the car park just left the tarmac onto the dust to get their images. This is Italy in miniature again. I like this one.
The Guardian opened with this image.
Yeah, it's like a fiberglass mountain. I really like it. You know, because what I enjoy about some of the images, you're not quite sure that the scale, is it real? Is she tiny? Is it big? You know, what's happening? And then you see the monorail and you're like, oh, okay, this clearly isn't a mountain. So I wanted some of the images to be kind of befuddling as you go through it. A dog, I mean, there's a quote here which explains. It says, dogs evolved from grey wolves around 15,000 years ago when humans began to manage them. Most breeds have been artificially selected and genetically engineered by humans within the last 200 years. So particularly the British Victorians went mad genetically modifying dogs, interbreeding them. So somehow they managed to make what was essentially a grey wolf into this. Just by selective breeding. But it sort of, to me, it's in the project because it talks about this kind of craving we have for a link with animals, which is very real and present. And yet, you know, this sort of mass hunting of wild animals that took place. This is in a natural history museum, just skins of hunted animals. Okay. And then this quote, a number of wild animals on Earth has halved in the past 40 years. Today, more tigers exist in captivity than in the wild. Just an extraordinary fact, really. I'm aware of the time, so I'm speeding through it a little bit. And then this is in Africa. It's real. We're in the Masai Mara. It's beautiful. This is a genuine Masai tribesman. But on the left, you can see this is it's called the Champagne Breakfast Experience. In fact, it's called the Out of Africa Champagne Breakfast Experience, based on a scene in the film Out of Africa, where they filmed it on this exact rock. It was a very colonial view of Africa with the Meryl Streep. And this Maasai warrior is paid to be there to add authenticity for tourists to have their kind of honeymoon experience on the rock, looking at this beautiful scene. I'm very glad it exists, but my argument is that the animals here have almost become like actors in our theatre. They've been allowed to survive in this diminishing pocket of land for our reassurance and our.
Well, not just the animals, also the guy standing there.
Indeed.
It's also like more like an actor, right?
Yeah,
in a way.
I mean, he's the real deal, but he is a paid actor on that day for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, and this is in South Africa. There's 200 lion farms in South Africa where they breed lions. They take them away from their mother at birth, bottle feed them milk, use them for tourists to have like interactive experiences. Oh, I petted a lion cub. Oh, I bottle fed a lion. Then you can do this walk with lions tour. And then when they get a bit bigger and are too unpredictable, they sell them to trophy hunting operations, basically to be hunted, even though they're practically tame. Very unhappy about that particularly. This is a hot air balloon experience in Kenya, in the middle of the Masai Mara. So you float down and have your lovely breakfast. You know, I mean, again, it's nice. I don't begrudge anyone going there and going on safari. I just don't want it to be the only thing we have left. This is in Nairobi, where they built this railway line right through the national park. And Sun City in South Africa, this kind of is actually a fake version of Africa in Africa. It's even more bizarre. It's not even in Florida. Very, very strange. Back to Norway with one of their extraordinary dialects.
Norway really wins this game, I must say.
Norway does, yeah. And this is a wrapped glacier. So to try and stop the glacier melting, they've used thermal blankets to try and slow its melt. And this is polar bear tours. You can see a little bear on the right-hand side, waiting for the sea ice to freeze over, surrounded by tour buses of people who've paid a lot of money to fly to northern Canada and Hudson Bay to, you know, have their moment with polar bears. And this is the wrapped glacier. You can see this tiny figure at the bottom pulling thermal blankets over it. And actually, they're not just really trying to save the glacier, they're actually trying to save a tourist ice grotto, which is beneath all of those blankets. So again, it's an
economic reason more so, right?
Economic reason, yeah.
We should slowly.
We are actually at the end.
Oh, that is.
And then finally, you know, this is artificial snow making, because, you know, to have the conditions we want, this is now a requirement. 200 of these at every resort. This is in Dubai, a snowmaking machine in a villa in the sauna. Breakfast with penguins in China, living penguins while you have your breakfast. In Singapore, beautiful actually, a garden city of Singapore. This is just a car park at a hotel, lovely. But because they've made it so green, they spray pesticides throughout the entire city twice a week. This is a pesticide spraying. So because they don't want the insects. So they get rid of all the insects, but of course then there's no birds either. And then I think this is the last spot in America, a man on holiday, perhaps wondering if he got what he wanted. So yeah, basically that is that. And the last thing I'll say, I got this Instagram message and I read it and I was like, who is this person? And it just said, God, this is me being at this beautiful rock. And I was like, I don't really get it. And then it slowly dawned on me, it was Patrick, the Maasai warrior. And he's on Instagram, of course, because the world is so globalized. So,
amazing.
Yeah, so now we're Instagram buddies. So yeah, that's it. Sorry, this has taken a little longer than we planned.
No, everyone is like, I'm mesmerized by the work, especially the diversity of it. All the places you went, looking at different angles, the birds. I mean, even the small dog, all the details, but also the bigger image. It's
Yeah, no,
amazing.
glad you
And
like.
you've been getting a lot of love in the comments. You might have seen
Oh
it
yeah, no, I haven't been
pass by.
monitoring that because I was looking at the
There's a
images.
lot of love for your work. And
Oh,
Fiona just shared the link to where people can buy your book. There, she put it
oh,
on the screen. And there were two other questions that came in, but I don't think we have time. But there's one question that I really, really want to end with, because I thought it was a smart and fun question.
yeah.
It's Pascal's question, saying, can we say that your framing is another staging of these stagings of this illusion of nature?
Oh, that's a very good question. Or rather, is it a question or is it a statement? Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, that's a serious comment in a way, because it's like with the Hackney Project, it became this book, which I felt became co-opted, became a kind of almost a hipster book that was sold. And there is always a risk of this. I don't think, I hope you're not accusing me of, underpinning this too much. But it's a good, funny
No,
question.
it is.
Yeah.
It made me just realize that we're all in this.
No, exactly. And actually, what's interesting is I get quite a lot of messages now from people when they've seen the work and they're like, oh my God. And they send me pictures. And they're like, I was at a restaurant and it's got this whole wall and this and plants and this. And more and more you get tuned into seeing it. Do you know what I mean? Even my own balcony, in the summer, I've been creating this. I got like banana palms out there and stuff. And it's like a little Anthropocene illusion of my own. So yeah, and even pets, I've started looking at my cat in a different way. It's like, wow, like
Yeah.
like a little shrunken tiger. I'm so craving a link that.
Shrunken tiger. Zed.
Anyway, we should. Are there any other questions we should quickly try and answer? Oh, someone's talking about Norway. I'm going to stand up for Norway later, and the Norwegians will preserve it. Okay, I'm sure the Norwegians do good in many ways, but just your natural history museum's a little old-fashioned. Good one.
Yeah, there's one other question we missed. Nina asked two questions, but the first one you've replied already. The second one, what from your experiences we could do to change this Anthropocene view and people's supremacist view on nature and animals?
I mean, again, it's the way we educate ourselves and our children and who we vote for and everything else. And it's not going to be like an overnight thing. And, we've got all these great things already. I mean, the Guardian article that came out today, there's an article I wrote in that. So if anyone types in Zed Nelson, the Guardian, the Anthropocene Illusion, there's an article which, some of my thoughts and feelings about it. But at the end of it, it does say, look, we've got things. There's like the ethical treatment of animals. We could do 1,000,000 times better. Greening, agricultural practices that are better. Fossil fuel reduction, the use of, all these things. It's not like we're short of ideas. It's just that we're short of leaders or business owners or captains of industry who really care about it, who will do it. So I don't think we have to destroy ourselves with guilt, but we have to fight for. We have to also spend our money more carefully and start boycotting people that are the worst offenders, literally, because that's the only economic model that we have in this sort of capitalist world. So, it's really important to vote with our money, vote also for politicians, who are not like Trump and anyone even remotely like him. I don't know what's happening. I wonder if, Trump's being in power is also part of this illusion that people crave, but in a very obscene way, at a time where actually it's time to now get serious and start caring about things. What happens? Someone is voted in who's the opposite of sane and caring. So yeah, you know, there's some very extraordinary psychological things happening. We have ideas that are worth pursuing, and we just need to actually do them and also try and influence others.
No, I think your series, I mean, all your series, but this last one, I think will have a real influence. I know you started out as a photographer thinking you could change the world. I think most of us did, and then became a little bit disillusioned. But at the same time, I do think a series like this, with so much thought behind it and so much research and smart thinking, really does. I mean, I really look differently at certain scenes that are now playing in the back of my mind, scenes that I saw that would have fitted right into your book, that I kind of never looked at it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Even in your work, the work you did for the New York Times about the dementia ward, or dementia home rather, where they have fake nature. Oh my God, we could talk about that for an hour.
Yeah, I never realized that linked to this either, but
yeah,
yeah,
and if
a lot of
anyone
fake
wonders
nature.
what we're talking about, they have a fake beach there in your images. They have a room, they project images of nature and twittering birds onto the ceiling above people's beds. So this is arguably a good version of fake nature utilized for some benefit. So it's not all bad, but there's also deep philosophical questions about, is artificial nature good enough? Some people would even argue, yeah, fine, we'll just record the bird song, we'll put that, you know, there, we'll paint that, we'll do this. That's enough. We don't need anything else. Some people would argue for that.
Yes.
And there's a very valid discussion about that to have. But yeah, I would say.
But I do hope it doesn't go that way. Please.
God, yeah.
Would be sad.
And also, it's a matter of valuing what we have. I mean, a lot of the time, it's just. Love Me was more about freeing. Like, I think when you have knowledge, you can free yourself of the influence, the insidious influence of advertising and the media. So, and you can then feel better, hopefully, if you understand the forces that are operating around you. With this, in a way, it's an argument, to value what we have and what we may lose, and to fight for that, I think, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the message that definitely comes across when looking at the images. Zed, I really want to thank you.
Well,
you should really have a look at these comments later on, because people are really loving all the work that you've done.
I promise I'm going to read them all, actually, when we turn this off. I'm sorry we haven't had more time for questions, but
I think we got through all of them.
If there's any death threats, I'll respond to them individually.
There we go. That's nice of you. I'm gonna order the book for sure. I hope lots of other people do. Fiona shared the link, so I know people will know where to find it. And thanks so much, for sharing all your knowledge and your beautiful images with all of us.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you, Ilvy.
Really lovely. And thanks everyone for being here. And I hope to see all of you on the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.